We're here for the content.
Most people listen to this, but like, I don't know, I'll look at the Spotify statistics and it'll be like 40% watched the video and listened. And I'm like, okay, well that's actually quite a lot. So
Yeah, I actually have a YouTube podcast, not at all related to tattooing. It's for like crafting and knitting and stuff, which is pretty big. There's like actually a ton of crafters out there that do that. And every morning I sit down with like my YouTube subscription feed and like watch as people like show me their knitting like while I'm knitting. And I subscribe to your channel and now it'll be like in my feed. But I watched some of your episodes already and they're so cute. Like I like the visual
oh,
aspect of it
thank
too.
you.
So I'm team video and I totally get the appeal.
Definitely. That sounds super cool. I have to check it out. You'll have to send it to me. I like crafts. I like watching little videos like that.
Yeah, 100%. And I sit in front of like the same part of my house and everything, like all my yarn and stuff. Like it's all back here, you know? But yeah, I'll definitely send you a link. You can like toss it in the description. I have like links in my videos because a lot of people that watch like my crafting podcast are very interested in the tattooing aspect as well. And I do a lot of like knitting craft tattoos too. So I always put like links to everything underneath it. So I'm going to toss a link like once the YouTube.
Hi, everybody. Welcome back to Tattoo Conscious. This is episode 12. Would you like to introduce yourself, where you're working, what your style is?
Sure. My name is Hayley. I can be found everywhere on the internet at Lock Knits. Most active on Instagram, and I also have a YouTube channel as well. My style is primarily, I would say, like very feminine, traditional. Still use a lot of like bold colors. I specialize in glitter tattoos too, but you know, the classic feel of like bold lines, large fields of color, and things like that. And I'm based out of Northeast PA. I'm in Wilkes-Barre. It's about 2 hours from New York City, 2 hours from Philadelphia. So I'm pretty accessible, but definitely suburban.
Yeah. How long have you been tattooing now?
I did my first tattoo 2.5 years ago. On my own ankle. It's really bad. Definitely come a long way since then. But
what is it? What did you put on your ankle?
I did a rose, just like a cute, like fat cabbage rose, which I know is like a hot take in and of itself. But if I could like access it now, I would show it to you, but it is very bad. And I never changed the voltage between the liner and the shader. So it was supposed to be, it was supposed to be like black work, kind of like, you know, not with a gray wash or anything, but it's basically like one big black blob now. And when I finished it, my mentor said, well, it's in there.
Got you into tattooing?
I've wanted to tattoo since I was 14. I actually grew up in a very rural area in Southwest PA, about an hour outside of Pittsburgh. And no one in my family has tattoos. No one like around me had tattoos at all. And the first like real tattoo I saw on a person that I knew was actually a full like Japanese bodysuit.
Oh my God.
And I remember being like so taken with it. Like the colors were so striking. It was like flawlessly executed. It was so beautiful. And I saw a photo of it and it was so interesting to me that the person that I was talking to about it was actually my teacher. It was my 8th grade English teacher.
Oh,
And
wow.
he had reached for something, I think to pull down maybe like the projector, I think. And he was wearing a polo shirt, and out of the corner of his polo shirt, like when he reached up, I saw that there was a tattoo on his back, and it was full color. Like I recognized it as like a Japanese tattoo. And I was like, what is that? And he was like, we are not having this conversation. Like this was just like a fluke thing. Like it never happened. And I just saw like his shoulder, you know what I mean? And I kept bugging him about it for like a few days. And I was like, I know you have more back there. Like show me what you got. And he was like, I'm going to show you a photo and then we're never going to talk about it again. And I was like, okay, sure. You know, I'll leave you alone. And it was this full, like I said, full color. I remember, and again, this was like 15 years ago. So who knows if I'm remembering it correctly, but I remember like a giant purple lotus flower and like a huge orange tiger across the whole thing and like the wind bars. And I mean, obviously it like stuck with me because now here I am telling you about it however many years later. But yeah, it was so striking to me. And it was the first time that I had seen art that was similar to like how I preferred to make art. I wouldn't necessarily call it like a background, but I've always been very inspired by like sort of cartoony, more like graphic illustration. And I feel like all the art that I was exposed to from a young age in like a very limited setting was more traditional, like fine art. And I saw it and I just thought, like, that's what I want to do. Like, I want to be that person who's like making that style of art. And it wasn't even necessarily like the application or working with people that drew me to it, but it was just, it's such a lifelong thing and it doesn't have to be anything that you don't want it to be, I guess, if that makes sense. But yeah, I was just so inspired with it. And I knew like from that moment that that was it. And I actually just recently tattooed my mom for the first,
That's
it was her
awesome.
first tattoo. It was very exciting. And I never in a million years thought I would tattoo my mom. But she sent me like a little Art Nouveau flower that she wanted on her wrist. And so I'm tattooing her. And in between, you know, her saying, I don't know how you do this. This is awful. This hurts so bad. In between that, we were kind of like reminiscing about how this is just always what I've wanted to do. And she basically said, like, you know, I'm proud of how far you've come and everything. And like, you really stuck with it. And it did take a long time. Obviously, I feel like everybody has that same experience to, you know, get where you want to be. But it was just very full circle experience to like talk with my mom about it, who was so against it for, you know, basically my entire life.
Yeah. How did you end up finding your style? I know you were talking about that really influenced you, but like, I feel like whenever I interview people, they used to do a way different style than they do now, and it ends up getting adapted.
Yeah, I feel like when I think about my style, I end up coming back to like the content is what sort of led me to my style. So when I was young, I started getting tattooed I think when I was 18. And I was so drawn to imagery that felt very like feminine and like kind of cutesy. And I had a really difficult time kind of explaining to the artist that I would get tattooed by, like the look and feel and vibe of what I wanted. I have this tattoo on my wrist. It's like a little ice cream cone. And I remember saying like, I want it to be like really bold and bright and colorful. And it was, that had to have been like 2012. And you know, that wasn't like in style at the time. I feel like the common style that I was seeing was like thinner lines, very like watercolory, like kind of washy. And I just remember like trying to explain all these tattoos that I wanted, and the tattooers would be like, okay, yeah, sure, and they would do it, and it was never like quite there. It was never quite like what I was envisioning. So when I started drawing, you know, for a portfolio and with the anticipation of like trying to tattoo, I came back to those subject matters of like cute things and like chubby animals and desserts and food and all the stuff that I wanted to get tattooed, like when I started getting tattooed, that I don't see as much, or I didn't at the time. And now certainly like the sky's the limit and, you know, there's tattoos of everything. But I felt very inspired by the subject matter. And then the more I was drawing those things, I just thought like I can simplify this and I can pare it down and I can meet kind of the bold traditional look, but do that with subject matter that's not traditional in that way, I guess.
Yeah, you do sure. Like a lot of like cutesy tattoos, and you're saying it's like the subject matter. So do you ever like watch movies or TV and you're like, oh my god, I could make something of this and make it cutesy?
Yeah, I do. And I take a lot. I'm a big like movie watcher. I love like I grew up with like horror movies. Obviously, I feel like so many of us did.
Yeah.
And I also grew up with anime, which was like a huge influence. And it's funny because I don't really watch anime now.
What was your favorite anime?
Sailor Moon. I'm a Sailor Moon, like totally like from the very start of me sitting down with like a pencil and paper and drawing. Like I drew anime girls forever, like forever, with the big eyes and like the colorful, like crazy hair and everything. And I remember watching Sailor Moon when I was very young. I think it was like airing in the US. Like I was like 4 or 5 or something. And I was just so drawn to the sparkle and the color and just how like delicate and sort of beautiful it was. And I liked that. And when I started tattooing, I did have a big passion for doing anime tattoos. And even just in the last like 2 years, I've seen my style get away from that so much because the actual application of tattooing those sort of styles is just, I can't think of anything like less fun than doing like the fine line, very wispy, like not washy color, but kind of, you know what I mean? Like I'm just way more drawn in tattooing to the bold look. And on myself, like on my own body, the tattoos that I have that I love are the ones that are really bright and very like heavy line work and everything like that. And I totally fell victim to like the early 2010s tattoo style. I actually have an entire sleeve that I had done, and it was like a Salvador Dali sleeve because I was like in art school and I thought I was gonna like love that forever, and I just didn't. And because of the style, because it was so light and washy and everything, it didn't heal well. I definitely didn't take care of tattoos. This was long before Sanoderm and everything, and the whole thing just sort of ended up very like washed out, and it just like wasn't my look anymore. And I ended up getting an entire like blast over sleeve, and that started my journey into blast over tattoos too, which is now something that I would also say like I specialize in. I do a ton of them now. And it's just funny how like the tastes have totally evolved, and it did start with that influence, that now I'm more likely to be like blasting over tattoos in that style than to be like getting them or doing them
Yeah.
myself. But it was definitely like a journey.
So, like, during your apprenticeship, did they go over, like, the fundamentals of traditional with you? Or was it, like, since you said you went to art school, I know some apprenticeships, they'll just be like, oh, you have background, so just do this stuff. Like, what was it like for
My
you?
mentor had a background in like traditional tattooing, and she's been tattooing for probably like 15 years now. So the traditional tattoos that we think of like right now in 2024 look a lot different than they did,
Mm-hmm.
when she was learning to tattoo. And I feel like right now what's in style is like the really thick line work. And when she was tattooing, even in like a traditional sense, it was thinner lines. The color application was different. So she has like a huge background in traditional tattooing, but it just didn't necessarily translate to like what I wanted to do. So there were like fundamentals, absolutely. Draw the line, shade off the line, that sort of thing. But I feel like I've kind of taken it in a different direction from how I learned to do it.
Yeah, for sure. And then you said earlier that you are doing some glitter tattoos. How did you fall into that? I really want to try some glitter tattoos. They seem so fun. Um,
They are, honestly, it's a blast, and I've seen them online. They seem to be way more popular in the UK. Obviously, like here we have Amanda Graves, and there's a couple people in Texas that I can think of that do the glitter tattoos. And it's funny because every application of the glitter is totally different. And I feel like however you tattoo anything else, like you can see that in your glitter work as well. So the people that I was drawn to the most were doing really thick glitter. So again, if you think about like Amanda Graves, she
mhm.
does very like fine line. I see it and it's beautiful, but it just looks like early onset arthritis to me. And I am much more drawn to like the bold, like heavy dot work of glitter tattoos. And I had only ever seen it on Instagram, like just still images of it. And I remember I was tattooing a friend of mine from college, and she at some point was the shop girl at the shop that I got tattooed by back in school. And so she was covered in like practice tattoos, and some good and some bad and things like that. But I remember asking her, I've seen this thing on the internet and I want to give it a try. Full disclosure, I have no idea how to do it. And she was like, I don't care, do whatever you want. So I ended up doing it. And my first pass of it, like, actually came out pretty good, like, all things considered, for like the extreme lack of knowledge that I had about it. It did come out wonderfully, and it was very fun. And it was just something different. I feel like it's something that looks aesthetically pleasing, but a lot of people don't dive into it. And it's it's easy for me to understand. While I was in college, I had like this whole foray into like pointillism and everything, and that's essentially what it is. It's just tattoo pointillism.
Yeah.
But I ended up experimenting with some different styles of it. I've done like a few different iterations, like over the last couple of years, where I'll do, a couple months I'll do it this way, a couple months I'll do it that way. But I basically just saw what I saw on the internet and said, I think I can do that. And it's been like a total downward spiral from there. And I always tell clients, like, I haven't met a tattoo that I can't glitter yet.
Hmm.
So I like combining the glitter aspect and like the heavy color with traditional tattoos. Um, and it's just been like a fun pairing, kind of like meeting those older styles that I was originally drawn to versus like what I'm doing right now.
Yeah, for sure. And then I always like to ask this of people who have gone to art school, which I think I've interviewed maybe, oh my gosh, I don't know, like one or two people who actually haven't gone to art school. It's really crazy because when I was looking for an apprenticeship or even thinking about tattooing, I was told, like, don't go to art school, don't do it, just like go straight into tattooing. And now everybody, I like, even the shop I work at, everybody's been to art school, like, so I like to ask, do you think that was really beneficial to you, or do you think you could have just skipped it and gone straight into tattooing? Like, what are your thoughts on art
I
school?
think when I like go back to what I learned and what I didn't learn in school, obviously like there's no college classes for building a tattoo portfolio. But what I did learn in art school was a lot about more abstract concepts of like how to manage your time and how to be disciplined. And when you're taking like an art program, there's no tests, there's no like exams or anything. So, you get to the end of the semester and whatever you have to show for it is like truly on you. It's your own, determination. It's how hard you worked on it. There's no like excuse, basically. And I feel like I learned a lot about being responsible for, what, like my job. Like it's my job to have your design ready. It's my job to be prepared for the appointment. And those are things that are very important to me in tattooing. I feel like everybody I tattoo is, whatever their experience is with other tattooers, I'm constantly hearing the same things. Like, thank you for being prepared, for being set up, not keeping me like trapped here in this tattoo shop any longer that I have to be. Because getting tattooed like kind of sucks. Like
Yeah.
it's absolutely secondary fun. And I feel like a lot of the like prep work that I do, I learned, way back when I was in school about being prepared and being accountable for like what you're going to bring to the proverbial table or whatever. Um, I feel like that's what I took away the most from it. And then obviously like building a portfolio, that sort of like prep work is helpful too. But I would say in terms of like transferable skills that I learned in college, like tangible things are very few and far between. I did a lot of like independent painting and learning how to do like flash painting and things like that from other tattooers around me. But it definitely opened a huge network for me too, which is great. I still actually the guy who did my first tattoo is back in the town where I went to school and everything, and we're still very good friends. And he's always known that I wanted to tattoo and that was the goal and everything. And he would always like sneak me pointers, you know what I mean, as I would get tattooed by him and be like, "What are you doing now? Why are you doing this?" And he would give me like little helpful tips and stuff. And now I go back and do guest spots at his shop.
Oh, that's so
So
cool.
yeah, it's been really nice. He's like totally followed me like through my entire journey and everything. And I have a lot of his early tattoos too now that he's like, don't look at that. Don't show people that. But it was a good way to build those relationships. And he introduced me to other people in the area and things like that. So even though I don't have, I would say like incredibly, you know, pointed skills that I learned like in college, it was definitely those like abstract concepts of accountability and being prepared.
Yeah, for sure. I love it. That's a really good answer. I've actually never heard that before. So I
I
really
get asked that a lot. I feel like whenever people talk to me about, where I went to school or what I did to like prepare for, portfolio building and like becoming a tattoo artist and things like that, that's something that I tell people all the time because it's good to have a degree for sure. I don't think that it was like the wrong thing to do to go to school, but it's just less tangible than we think of whenever we think of like someone going to business school.
hmm.
You know what I mean? And then they come out and they're, you know, whatever.
Yeah, I definitely think if somebody has the means to be able to go to college because, how America is set up, they should do it if they want to do it, because I definitely think it could build some important skills. And I've never, like, usually people answer that question, they're like, oh, well, I learned how to do this craft or this art and da-da-da-da, but you could learn that on YouTube. But you're talking about time management, and nobody has ever said that before, and that's actually a really viable skill, especially in the industry. I mean, that is such a good answer.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then I was also going to ask, so you were talking about, giving your clients a certain experience. What does an appointment look like with you? Like, what are the expectations? How do you set up for your client and make them feel comfortable?
Sure. I would say like client experience is probably one of the absolute biggest focuses for me, like as a tattooer. And the reality is like I do American traditional tattoos, and like you can go down the street and find four other American traditional tattooers. So for me, the client experience is what makes all the difference. And it's what is going to like set me apart from going to anybody else. So even before the tattoo appointment, I actually do all of my booking digitally. I don't have like a physical, appointment book or anything. I use like a booking system. So I do any like consultation work I do via email. It's very, very rare that I like actually have to bring someone into the shop to like feel prepared for their appointment. But I will map out, what they want, where they want it. I typically have people send me photos of the area, stuff like that. And I book in like time increments. So I know based off of what you want and where you want it and everything, how long to book you for. And then my clients will go into my scheduling system and just book it themselves. So it's like a big calendar view where they jump in and I'm like, this is like, you're looking for a 1 hour slot or a 2 hour slot. So just go in there and throw it, wherever. And then when the client comes in, sometimes it's the first time that I've met them, or it's the first time that like we're working on an area that we haven't tattooed them in before or anything. And I've never felt unprepared in that way. I feel like with all the digital tools we have now with like Procreate and taking photos and all of that stuff, like it's easy to feel ready for the tattoo when it happens. Then clients come in, we get them stenciled. I've actually moved away from hourly rates also. This is like a new thing that I'm doing for myself starting in 2024, where I'm just flat rating everything. And I do feel like the time management portion has allowed me to know exactly how long a tattoo is going to take. And in the last month, with me doing the flat rate pricing and everything, I've really tried to measure up, here's the estimate I gave the client. I usually give them two ranges. So when they come in, I'll print out two different sizes and I say, this one's 200 and this one's 250, whatever. And we determine what's a best fit for, their body, and then also what's the best fit for their budget too. And then doing the tattoo, I've noticed that, comparing it to if I would have charged them an hourly rate, I've gotten it down to like within 10 or 20 minutes of like what I estimate. So the flat rate pricing has been working out well for me. It's been working out well for clients too. It's not a surprise on either end, so that's nice. But basically the client comes in and chooses their size and we do the placement and things like that. When people get tattooed by me, one of the things that I like absolutely try to offer is comforts, like physical comforts, I would say. We use a lot of pillows. I have like a little rolling cart that sits beside the bed. So like you can keep your water bottle and your phone, all that stuff there. We actually have at the shop that I'm at right now, we have like a rotating like Lazy Susan candy dish so that people can just have a little snack. We have like chips, Gatorade, water, whatever. So making sure like you feel good and you feel like comforted and things like that. And then on the non-physical side, like I'm very talkative, obviously within reason. If a client doesn't want to talk to you, you can't make them talk. I'm sure you've experienced
yeah.
But, I'm like, I want to know like what part of town are you from? Like, how did you find me? I always ask everybody, did you find me on Instagram? Did someone like recommend you, to me or whatever? And we just kind of like keep the conversation moving the entire time. And I feel like I know a lot about my clients. Like I'm interested genuinely in like the human experience. And now I'm at the point in my career where I don't have to be hyper zoomed into like the process. Like tattooing is now like a natural thing for me. So, when you're not hyper focused on that, like talk to me, have a conversation, like tell me about yourself and things like that. So we try to like keep it talking, keep it moving like through the entire appointment. And I do try to work, I would say like quickly and effectively too. I'm definitely not like someone who lingers in a tattoo any longer than I have to.
Mm-hmm.
And I personally am not very good at getting tattooed. Like I sit like shit. I'm always like, how much longer do we have left? What's left on this? Like I absolutely hate getting tattooed so bad. And I try to be empathetic to people during the tattooing process that like I know what you're going through and it sucks. So I really try to like do everything I can to make it a more comfortable experience, like physically, emotionally, mentally. And I know I have a lot of clients that unfortunately tell me that they've had like really gnarly tattoo experiences in the past. And again, I think that's something that is what sets me apart from other maybe American traditional
Do you
tattooers.
ever, so you talk about like accommodating them, do you ever use numbing cream or recommend a numbing cream for anybody? Because I know some artists don't like it because they act like, oh, it will take the color out or da 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 da.
I am not a big fan of numbing cream only because it is so wildly different for every single skin type and person. And there's a lot of, unfortunately, like trust on the client's part that goes into using numbing cream. And I've had people use numbing cream in the past where they come in and they're like, I put this on 3 hours ago. And I'm like, oh no, like, that's too much. Like that's no good. So I almost exclusively like encourage people to not use numbing cream. But I will say after I line a tattoo, I use Bactine.
Yep.
And then after we do the black shading, I use Bactine again. So unless someone has like an allergy to lidocaine, we're using that pretty much with every appointment, just like a little spritz. And the guy actually who did my blast over sleeve, remember I told you I don't sit very well for
Mm-hmm.
tattoos. He's the first person that ever used Bactine after we did the line work. And I remember being so like, oh my gosh, this feels so much better. I'm pretty convinced that that's like the only reason that I have this sleeve project completed is because it would just have taken so much longer from me as the client to be able to like sit through it all. So, just taking little bits and pieces from other tattooers on like the Bactine front, but I do use that with every single client, if it makes sense, if it's like a tiny tattoo. Sometimes you just got to sit through it.
Yeah. What are some of your favorite supplies to use, like machine and inks and all that?
I actually, up until probably 6 months ago, I only owned one tattoo machine. I don't like have anything special or different for like lines versus shading. I do everything like start to finish with a Bishop Packer.
That's exactly
And
what I have.
yeah, I recently I was doing a convention last year and there was a Bishop booth there and I was able to snag another Bishop Packer just to have as like a backup and to, maybe I'll run this one for a couple months and then, do everything I need to do to it and then switch to the other one. But yeah, I can pretty much accomplish everything with the Bishop Packer, which is nice. And I will say, if there's like anybody out there watching this that does traditional tattoos, like you can do like a fat ass line with a Bishop Packer. There's nothing stopping you from doing that.
Do you have any favorite cartridges you like to
I
use with
do.
it?
I did my first 10 tattoos with a coil machine. My mentor was like, you absolutely unequivocally must learn how to assemble, tattoo with, and then disassemble a coil machine. And they look really bad, like really, really bad. So after the 10th one, she said, okay, this was a nice exercise. And, you can come back to it if you want, but let's try a pen and see how that goes. And I got like significantly different results. I have like very weak wrists that have never gotten stronger as I've tattooed more or anything like that. But while I was tattooing with a coil machine, I really liked just the regular, normal, like kingpin needle on bar, their bold traditional line. And I found, I don't know if it's supposed to be like a direct conversion from like this is the cartridge version of what we offer on needle on bar, but the kingpin scepter cartridges I've been like a big fan of. I've tried every single like fancy pants expensive cartridge out there, and just for what I do for like the bold line that I want to get, it's the kingpin scepter is just fine. And they're incredibly affordable too. Like I've done Black Claw. I like Black Claw, but I don't know if there's something about the Packer with the Black Claw cartridges that, you put them in there and you have to like really like run your machine like 7, 8, 9, 10 times before it like wants to actually like get moving.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and just for like what I was paying for that, and then obviously like what the client has to pay to in relation to like keeping me stocked in supplies, I was like, there has to be a better option. And the Kingpin line is great. Someone also must be onto that though too, because they're like always sold out of stuff. So I've been doing like mass ordering of the Kingpin scepters, like when I can get them. But they're great and they're affordable. I totally like do not believe that the more expensive a product is, like the better it is. It's just whatever works for you. And some things work for me that are really expensive and others don't. So that's been really good for me so far.
Do you use to line your tattoos with? Do you use liners or do you use shaders? Because I know some tattooers use shaders.
I actually just revisited the shaders. I have a box over there on the counter that's going to go to the shop with me of round shaders because the Kingpin scepters have been so difficult to get a hold of. But the scepter cartridges that I'm using are the bold traditional liners. So technically a liner, just very like very spaced far apart.
Mm-hmm.
It gives the same look to me, like in my experience of getting tattooed, as someone would like, lighter a needle on bar. It gives kind of like that same look to it. But I do and have done both. I think it's just, whatever you can get your hands on.
Yeah. Also, you said that your boyfriend's a tattoo artist. I haven't ever interviewed somebody who's dating another tattoo artist or even in a relationship. How is that? Do you guys work at the same shop?
We don't work at the same shop. It's funny because when I think about our shop experiences, like you could not find a more like polar opposite vibe when it comes to my shop versus his shop. He works with, I think, 3 or 4 other tattooers. He's been tattooing for 11 years. So he's been in it for a lot longer than I have been. And we met through tattooing, which was really cool. But his shop is like a traditional walk-in, like dude shop.
Yeah.
Like the best way to describe it. They have a shop manager who works there that like keeps them all in line and running and things like that. And there's always like other people in the shop with him. And it just has like a really like classic tat shop vibe. And my shop, both shops that I've worked in so far are private studios. So it's more of like a relaxed fit, you know what I mean? Where again, like I'm asking you if you want a bottle of water or anything. And I actually sewed some vinyl pillows for his shop because they didn't have like pillows for clients before. So it's just like two different vibes. But we actually have incredibly similar styles that happened totally independent of one another. And that was something that we kind of bonded over at first. And now, like after I moved out here, I actually moved to Wilkes-Barre from Pittsburgh to be with him basically. And now we have a ton of overlap of clients. I tattoo like the guys that work with him at his shop and things like that. So our styles work very well together. And one thing that we tried last year that luckily worked out well is we tried traveling together in the tattoo convention space. So when I started tattooing, my mentor was very big into travel, go where the money's at, do conventions, get your name out there. It's a lot of hard work. It's very exhausting and everything, but it's incredibly rewarding. And I know that after talking to so many people, like conventions can be very polarizing. Like people tend to either really like them or they really hate them. And I love them. Like I love traveling. I love like meeting people. I love the hustle of like 3 really long days and you get home and you're tired, but you have like awesome work that you've done. You met a lot of cool people and everything. And my boyfriend actually has not traveled, definitely not like anywhere as much as I have. So last year, I'm looking at conventions to do 4, 5, 6 months out from where we were at the time. And I said, hey, do you want to get a booth together and we'll give it a go? And even though, we live together, we tattoo together, we like tattoo similarly, like all that stuff, like working in a 10 by 10 space with someone for 3 days, like there is no
That's
guarantee yeah, that you're not going to get like really frustrated with each other by the end of it. And so I actually booked us like 3 conventions before I knew whether or not it was like going to work. But we did the first one and like I had a wonderful time, but I didn't want to ask him. I wanted to like really like let the weekend kind of set in and we were on the way home and he said, I loved working next to you all weekend. Like it was such a treat. It was so nice to like work with you and everything. And I said, that's great because we got two other ones booked for the rest of the year. But it really worked out and it was great. And I actually got him switched over to the Bishop Packer. Like he's on just like coloring and shading with it right now, but he loves it. So, you know, that allows us to like share more supplies and things like that. And if he needs a cartridge, like I'll get him one or whatever. But everything that we can do to like make traveling more effective and like efficient for us, it's really worked out. We actually have a lot of plans like this year for travel and things like that. We've done some guest spots together, conventions, and it's definitely mutually beneficial for both of us. And it's nice to like get out of town and have like a weekend together, like kind of doing what we love. But that's been like the biggest part, that even though we don't work in the same shop together, like we still get to work side by side, and it's always a blast.
That is so freaking cute. I'm not gonna lie, I love that. That is so awesome, and I'm glad you guys are like, oh, that's just, I love that. I love that so much.
Yeah, I'm very lucky.
Do you guys ever like inspire each other to do stuff like with artwork wise? Like, oh, I'm painting. Like, oh, you should try doing this.
Yeah, we're big into like doing split sheets together. We've done like little sticker collabs before where like he'll draw half of it, I draw the other half. And people, especially like around here, like in the area that I'm in, like he is, I mean, obviously in my mind, he's like the best traditional tattooer out here. But, you know, we have a lot of clients that like know him or like know me and then meet him, or they know him and meet me. And everybody, like the feedback is always like, you guys do such great work like together. We actually are doing right now, we're making like a joint banner for conventions for this year. So we each have our banners behind the booth, but we want to make a banner like for the front. And so we're doing like some collaborative stuff there. We have like a t-shirt design that we're making together. And it really is like you can see how the styles work together, but they are different. Like we have like our own little nuances.
That's so cool. Okay, earlier you talked about knitting. How did you get into knitting? What type of stuff do you like to knit?
So I've been knitting. I just turned 30, so this makes 18 years of knitting. I learned how to knit when I was 12, and I saw someone, you know, close to me, like in my family knitting. And I was like, oh my God, I want to know how to do that. So she taught me how to knit. I knitted pot holders and dishcloths for like 10 years, basically. That's all I did. And then in my early 20s, I really like started, everybody in like the yarn universe calls it like knitting with a capital K, where it like becomes your personality basically. And I've definitely arrived there. I got into like garment knitting. I make blankets. I have since like taught myself how to crochet. I've done like pretty much every craft under the sun. And knitting is like my ride or die. And then knitting podcasts became so much more relevant, especially with COVID, the rise of like YouTube and things like that. So I've done YouTube podcasts for the last like 4 years, I think. I did a couple with my friends. Now I'm doing it by myself. But it's just a blast. It's very similar to tattooing in that it's incredibly community based. So, you know, I make my YouTube videos or whatever, and my friends will like sit down, have their morning coffee, and like watch my silly little video. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But one of the funny parts of being like a crafter and tattooer is that I do a ton of like craft based tattoos. I have 2 tattoos on my shoulder blades. They're 100 years old and they look really bad. And I got them done by I would say like my hometown tattoo artist that was like this big motorcycle dude, who obviously like never picked up a pair of knitting needles in his life. And I remember when I sent him the photo of like, I want a yarn ball with like 2 knitting needles crossed in it. Like I got to the appointment and he had drawn something up that looked like spaghetti. And I was like, no, like a ball of yarn. And like to me, that seems so obvious of like ball of yarn knitting needle. And he just did not get it. And I thought to myself, like when I started tattooing, I was like, surely that can't be like just my experience. Like clearly someone else has like suffered this same fate as I have too. So I do a ton of like craft-based tattoos. As far as like knitting, crocheting, like yarn stuff, I've done like quilting tattoos. Like quilters need tattoos too, you know what I mean?
Put that on a
So
t-shirt.
yeah, exactly. And it's funny because like my crafting podcast has brought me like a ton of clients who will like travel to get tattooed by me for like a, like one of my weird like pinup ladies or whatever who's just like holding a, a set of knitting needles, like doing her thing. I actually just tattooed someone a few months ago who drove from Rhode Island to Pennsylvania.
Wow.
And when she got to the shop, I was like, so like what brings you here? And she was like, this. And I was like, why did you come here for like this tattoo? And she's like, because I love your work. And it's just so funny, like what a reach, the internet, as much as like we all hate it. And like, I absolutely hate it
Oh
for
yeah.
sure. But it does, like, it really just connects you with people, who make you feel like you're not alone. And there is a certain value to that, to be able to get like a craft tattoo from someone who like does the craft.
Do you ever sell any of your knitting stuff, like your blankets?
It was a very harsh reality over the last like decade when I really started knitting, seriously, I would say that there is no way to like effectively monetize that at all. But when I do a lot of like gift knitting for like people in my life and friends and stuff. That is always kind of like well received. Like everybody in my life knows how much time it takes to like make these things. So they don't take it for granted, but it is very
Yeah.
special if I knit something for a friend.
That's so awesome. I think my last question for you is, as somebody who is looking to get into the industry, if they're listening to this podcast, what would be your recommendation and how would, like, any advice for them, basically?
Yeah, I feel like I get asked this question a lot, and my like number one response is that you have to bring something to tattooing. And I feel like, obviously I've only been tattooing for 2.5 years, but I worked very hard to be able to tattoo, and to do the kind of tattooing that I'm doing right now. And a big focus, and anything I would encourage someone trying to get into tattooing is like, do make your mark. Like you have to give something to tattooing. I think a lot of people who are tattooing now and aren't seeing the fruits of their labor, in terms of like being able to make money and book clients and bring people in, is because like they're just taking and taking and taking, without giving anything back. And whether that's, you find like a really niche market of like tattoo crafters or whatever, you know what I mean? Like develop your own style, like do weird tattoos. Like we don't need to see the same things over and over and over again. There's nothing wrong with that. But like if you are a person who's just gonna like draw the same things over and over and over, like we're at maximum capacity, like you have to do something different. And like let your personality come through in your work, but be prepared to like work very hard because this market is like absolutely brutal for as many people are out there like tattooing now. And again, there's nothing wrong with that. I think that like gatekeeping tattooing like does make sense to a point. But you just have to be prepared to put your whole like self into it. I like firmly believe that you cannot tattoo like part-time. Like it is your life. There's a reason that so many of us are like our whole personalities are just tattooing, because like that's the reality of what it takes to make like a good experience and a good like clientele, and to like continue learning. It's not like you shouldn't be in it for the money. It's not a cool job. Like it's the best job in the world, but it's not like cool the way I think the internet makes it look cool. It's a lot of like high highs and low lows. And I don't know if everybody who's in tattooing now, really realizes that.
Yeah, dude, that was a phenomenal answer. I love that so much. No, for real. I can tell you get asked that a lot.
I do. And like, it doesn't have to be like, I really, really believe in my heart that like, you don't have to do anything like revolutionary, but you do have to like put yourself into it. Um, and I think that the best like benchmark for that is that when someone can look at a tattoo and said, Hayley did that tattoo, like that's it. That should be like hands down all you're searching for, is like your work is recognizable. There's like part of you in your work. Because like the love is there when you can really see it in that way.
Yeah, I love that. Thank you so much for being on. I really enjoyed this. I really liked all your answers, and I'm gonna have to check out your freaking knitting videos. I'm very excited.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll send you a link to it for
Dude,
sure.
for sure. I'll put it in the description so everybody can watch the knitting videos. I appreciate you so much. Thank you for being on.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, of course.